live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the palatial yet not overly ostentatious studios of 365 Sports here in beautiful New York City. Welcome on in to another week and a Monday edition of the Zach Gelb Show right here on 365 Sports. You could always get at me on the good old cesspool of Twitter or on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. Or you could get at me on TikTok at The Zach Gelb Show. If you're watching us now live on YouTube, please subscribe to the 365 Sports YouTube channel. However, if you are consuming us after the show and you are not listening to us live, well, welcome. We appreciate you here. I need you to do me a favor. YouTube.com/@365SportsYT. YouTube.com/@365SportsYT. Subscribe. The crew is with us today for another week. Andrew Valade going to be operating our poll question and some of our social media clips. Garrett Ross, obviously the executive producer of the Zach Gelb Show on 365 Sports, back in our Waco, Texas studios. Let's start with the Combine and the aftermath from that. And really, we're going to get into this Minnesota Vikings quarterback situation. Also to note today on the show, in 30 minutes from now, Benjamin Robinson from Grinding the Mocks is going to join us. And then Jeff Nowak is going to stop by at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. He's the Saints sideline reporter as we continue to go through all 32 teams in the NFL as we gear up for the offseason and how we're going to track it with free agency right around the corner, the draft coming up at the end of April. And before you know it, it will be another fall of football for the year of 2026. But I want to start off with this note, and I think the most interesting part about the Combine may not be about a player that's going to get drafted, but it's when you have all the GMs and coaches in one room and you have people talking and people gathering, 95% of the NFL world being in Indianapolis, there's going to be a lot of conversation. There's going to be a lot of rumors. A.J. Brown is a talking point. Max Crosby is a talking point. But I really do believe the most fascinating storyline heading into the offseason is actually what the heck the Minnesota Vikings are going to do at the quarterback position. Now, on Friday, I opined about my idea how I believe that if the Vikings don't get this quarterback situation right this year, then Justin Jefferson, it's going to lay the foundation for him to request a trade. I saw that got some traction on the internet. A lot of sites were writing about my opinions on the matter. But I look at that matter with the Vikings quarterback situation. This is a team, they have a very good defense of Brian Flores. They have a very good coach in Kevin O'Connell. They have a great wide receiver in Justin Jefferson. As long as Jordan Addison stays out of trouble, he's a number 2. They're probably going to have to tinker with the number on TJ Hockenson, but he's a really reliable tight end. I know that they're releasing or just released over the weekend Aaron Jones, or they plan to release him. So I look at the Vikings offense and I look at this Vikings team. This is a team that if they could just get serviceable play from the quarterback position, solid play from the quarterback position, they should be a playoff team. And we saw them 2 years ago overachieve in the regular season. We saw them 2 years ago have Sam Darnold look the best that he's been in his NFL career. And he was putting up these big, prodigious numbers. And then at the end of the year, he had 2 stinkers, one in the regular season against the Lions, with the number 1 seed in the division on the line. And then he followed it up with a bad performance up against the Rams. And once they allowed Sam Darnold to walk out the door, their plan was, okay, that's because they have J.J. McCarthy. But they failed to provide a quarterback room around J.J. McCarthy where if J.J. didn't work, that they had a good alternative. And remember, Daniel Jones was in that building, 2 seasons ago. Then he walks over to Indianapolis. We know all offseason long last year, Aaron Rodgers wanted that job. Aaron Rodgers wanted to be the starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings never bit. He ends up going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So now, a year removed, you look at Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy now has been there for 2 seasons. He's barely played. when he does play, he doesn't look all that good. And you have a team that's being held back right now because they don't have a competent body starting at the quarterback position. So what they do this offseason is the most fascinating storyline that I think will be out there that we could see coming. But in terms of who they bring in and how they address it, your guess is as good as mine. And this is the thing with this. Are you actually addressing it? Like, no bleep, they're going to be bringing in a quarterback position. You know, they're going to be bringing a new quarterback to compete with J.J. McCarthy. But is that going to be an actual competition? Or is it going to be an mediocre name where it's really set up for J.J. to win? And then if J.J. doesn't win it, it shows you how much of a bad spot J.J. McCarthy is in. Or are you bringing in a quarterback that you could look at and you could say right away, that's our starting quarterback, or if he's given the opportunity to compete with J.J. McCarthy, we intend for that guy to win it. And like, I don't know what the Vikings are going to do. I truly don't. I think they should go pursue Kyler Murray. It looks like from the reporting that we had over the weekend that in all likelihood the Arizona Cardinals are going to cut him. So if you could get Kyler Murray basically on the free, because we know what that contract is with the Cardinals. We know all the money that they owe him. If you could get him on a very, very, very cheap deal, I would bring in Kyler Murray from the Minnesota Vikings. But even though I think the best destination for Kyler Murray would be Minnesota, and with all these options out there, I do believe Kyler is the best option. I don't know if he's going to be a Minnesota Viking. For some reason, and this is what I've been on now for about 2.5 weeks, I just have this thought that Kyler Murray is going to wind up with the Jets. And if Kyler Murray plays well with the Jets this year, then they could use the 3 first-round picks that they have next year, not in a quarterback. If he doesn't play well, then you just get rid of Kyler Murray, and boom, you go draft a quarterback in the first round next year when you have 3 first-round picks. But I'm going through the options here for the Vikings. Derek Carr doesn't excite me. I think Tua Tagovailoa is a tough sell because Tua and Brian Flores had a nasty relationship. And are you really going to bring in Tua Tagovailoa after all that went down with Brian Flores? I know years have since passed, but Brian Flores doesn't like Tua Tagovailoa, and we know Tua Tagovailoa doesn't like Brian Flores. So Tua is a tough sell for me. Aaron Rodgers, I think, would make a ton of sense. I think Aaron Rodgers won last year. You could even sell it to J.J. McCarthy. We still believe in you. We think you know, it's weird saying it because he hasn't been able to play in 2 years. We think you need to sit on the sideline, learn the game. We're going to bring in a guy that is one of the top 10 or 15 quarterbacks of all time. Well, we're going to go bring in Aaron Rodgers. You learn from him. You watch him. Then you be ready for next year. That's when we're going to use you. I keep on seeing Geno Smith. I don't understand the love affair with Geno Smith. I get it. Geno Smith had a nice 2-3 year run with Seattle. I understand that the game passed Pete Carroll by. Chip Kelly wasn't the right offensive coordinator. The Raiders' offensive line was god-awful. The Raiders as a team are god-awful. But with how many turnovers Geno Smith had last year, if you're bringing in Geno Smith to compete with J.J. McCarthy, that is not this grand plan that gets me excited for the Vikings this upcoming season. Kirk Cousins, I would tend to pass. That's just me. I know there's familiarity there. Getting back with your ex, though, I don't really love that. And the other name that will get thrown out there is Anthony Richardson. If the quarterback competition is Anthony Richardson and J.J. McCarthy, I don't see things being that much different for the Minnesota Vikings this upcoming year. So I go through those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 names. Carr, Tua, Rodgers, Geno, Kyler, Kirk, and Anthony Richardson. The 2 names where if I was running the Minnesota Vikings, I would say we got to get one of these 2 names. Either you sign Kyler Murray when he becomes available, or you go bring in Aaron Rodgers because you know Aaron Rodgers wants to be there. And Aaron Rodgers is probably the safest bet between Carr, Tua, Rodgers, Geno, Kyler, Kirk, and Richardson. Rodgers probably, even at his age, is the safest bet. Kyler, though, has the ability to work out long term. And I'm not some Kyler Murray stan, as Garrett Ross would call me. I've been severely disappointed with Kyler Murray during his tenure with the Arizona Cardinals. There has been questions about his work ethic. There has been questions about his commitment. Obviously, he's not been able to fully stay healthy. But Carr, what like you go through all these other options. If I tell you, or if you're listening to me and you're saying, Zach, I don't want Aaron Rodgers for the Vikings. I don't want Kyler Murray, for the Vikings. What sells you on the other options that makes you think that they're going to be better than either Aaron Rodgers or Kyler Murray? Derek Carr didn't play football last year. Derek Carr is talking about how he wants to go to a Super Bowl contender. The man has never won a playoff game. Tua Tagovailoa, it's just not a fit where maybe you go have a career redemption somewhere else. When Brian Flores is a major part of this organization, that just doesn't seem like a fit. Geno Smith, too many turnovers. Kirk Cousins, I understand Kirk, got opportunities last year and was fine, but how is Kirk a better option in the year of 2026 than Aaron Rodgers? He's not. And Anthony Richardson, it's too much of a project, just like how J.J. McCarthy right now is a project. So that's where I would start. And those would be my two options that I have to go get either A or B. And however order you want it to be, it either has to be that the Vikings, in my estimation, need to bring in Aaron Rodgers or they need to bring in Kyler Murray this offseason. In terms of what they're going to do, it is starting to feel like Rodgers will go back to Pittsburgh. A lot of people are talking about Kyler Murray going to the Jets. Minnesota is going to be, if you need a quarterback this offseason, Minnesota's still going to be the belle of the ball. Like, if we look at teams that could be in the market for a quarterback this offseason, you start off in the AFC East, the Jets and the Dolphins. Would you rather go be the starting quarterback for Minnesota this year or the Jets or the Dolphins? It's not even close. It's Minnesota. AFC North, I don't know how much the Browns are going to be in the market for a quarterback. I think if they're bringing in a quarterback, it's going to be a cheap option to compete with Shador and maybe Deshaun Watson. But I know that we had Zach Jackson on last week. I still don't think that they're going to be the ones that bring in Malik Willis. Like, that could be an Anthony Richardson destination if I'm just being fully transparent. You look at the AFC South, Indianapolis, could be in need of a quarterback. It feels, though, that they're not really going to be that open to bringing in another quarterback because I feel as if Daniel Jones is going to get the deal done there. The Raiders, they're going to draft Mendoza, and then you get into the NFC. No one in the NFC East needs a quarterback right now. No one in the NFC North outside of Minnesota needs a quarterback right now. In the NFC South, all right, maybe Atlanta, but Michael Penix Jr. probably will return at some point. And then in the NFC West, Arizona obviously needs a quarterback. So you go through those destinations, you go through those options. There is no doubt about it. The best quarterback option this year, if I'm a quarterback, whether it's via trade or whether it's via free agency, would easily be the Minnesota Vikings. So who should the Vikings acquire at quarterback? That's our poll question for today. Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith. Those are going to be the four names that we throw out there. And the early returns, wow, it's split 50-50. Oh, no, just updated. 67% go with Kirk Cousins. The rest go with Kyler Murray, and those are the super-duper early returns. So we'll get back into those. We just posted it, so we'll get more as they do calculate it. But let me get to this reporting from Jeremy Fowler. So from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, Jeremy Fowler from ESPN added, I've also heard that the Vikings are considering Murray and Smith as they outline their veteran quarterback plan. Tua Tagovailoa and Kirk Cousins are also on their radar. Some I've talked to are breaking those four into two tiers with Murray and Smith in the first group. So there's not even a mention of Aaron Rodgers. So Jeremy Fowler is saying from ESPN, there's four quarterbacks they could be interested in. There's a preference in the first two compared to the second two. So their preference, according to Jeremy Fowler, is Kyler Murray or Geno Smith. And then if they can't get Geno Smith, maybe Geno Smith doesn't become available. That's a possibility. I know that he's under contract with the Raiders. I think he's probably going to get released. And we know that it's looking likely that Kyler's going to get released. But let's say Kyler goes to the Jets. I don't know. Let's say Geno Smith signs with the Arizona Cardinals, just for throwing teams out there. Or maybe let's say Geno Smith signs with the Miami Dolphins. Then if they can't get Murray and Smith, according to Jeremy Fowler, then their preference would be between Tua Tagovailoa and Kirk Cousins. Hey, Garrett Ross, do me a favor here real quickly.
Yo.
Rank these 1 through 4.
Okay.
If you're the Vikings and you were their general manager, Tua Tagovailoa, Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, and Kyler Murray. 1 through 4 on who would you want the most and who would you want the least. Once again, Tua, Kirk, Kyler, Geno.
I'm second. Honestly, I think I might go in their order. I'm going Kyler. You know what? I can't. I still have to put Tua over Geno. I do. I don't know about that. Then I would go Geno, and then I go Cousins. I just don't see a realistic situation or scenario where Kirk Cousins goes back to Minnesota. I feel like we've done that. We've seen that. I just don't see them going that route again, honestly.
If I was running the Vikings and you say those are the 4 options and the only 4 options, Kyler, Geno, Tua, and Kirk.
Yeah.
I would say Kyler clearly won.
Geno and Tua it's hard to debate that. And for me, it was.
I would actually go Kirk 2.
Oh, okay.
Geno 3, Tua 4.
Okay.
So here's my rationale. I think Murray out of the 4 has the highest ceiling. I would also like to see Murray with competent coaching and weapons like he has in Minnesota. 2, at least there's familiarity with Kirk. I would then put Geno 3. And then the reason I put Geno 3 is if he could eliminate the turnovers, and maybe it's just the Raiders, and I guess that would be the rationale, then you could get just competent quarterback play. But I don't think, and this is why I put Tua 4, I don't think Tua is salvageable. I don't think Tua is fixable. I think Tua Tagovailoa is damaged goods. The injury history is so scary. His arm strength has been called into question. I just truly believe Tua is damaged goods. Can Tua go have one solid season somewhere? Yes. If you're bringing in Tua, though, at his age, and you're expecting him to go play 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more years in the NFL, I just don't see Tua being a consistent starting quarterback. And I look at Kyler, even though there's been injuries, I think Kyler's injuries are significantly worse, or significantly, Tua's injury are significantly worse than Kyler's, because you're talking about the head. For Geno and Kirk, it's a 1 year, see what you could do to just table the quarterback conversation to the next. But for Tua, he may need a year off. Like, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if Tua goes somewhere and he doesn't play there for a year, and then the following season, that's when he gets his opportunity to just salvage his career. But I have a tough time, and I would be really, really surprised if we're talking about this great redemption story for Tua Tagovailoa. So, yeah, I would go Kyler, Kirk, Geno, then Tua 1 through 4 if I were running the Minnesota Vikings. Now, that was just the Jeremy Fowler thing when we talked about those quarterbacks in tiers. And it's looking like, according to Jeremy Fowler, it would be Kyler Murray and Geno Smith in tier 1, and then it'd be Kirk Cousins and Tua Tagovailoa, in tier 2. This is Matthew Berry from NBC Sports. He was throwing out a lot of intel that he was hearing in Indianapolis when it comes to quarterbacks. Take a listen.
All right, so I'm at the NFL Combine, and you know what happens at the NFL Combine? Rumors. Look, I'm not a journalist. I'm not reporting this as news. I'm just telling you, you go out late at night at bars, you hear a bunch of stuff, and some of the rumors I've heard about quarterbacks are fascinating. Now, everyone wants Malik Willis to go to the Miami Dolphins. Everyone says, oh, that's going to happen. I heard no. I heard Malik Willis is getting at least $30 million and is going to be the starting quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals. Which makes sense. One brother, LaFleur, had him. Now the other brother, LaFleur, in charge. Makes sense that the brothers are talking, saying, go get yourself some Malik Willis. So I think that'd be a good fit. I heard that Kyler Murray, not on Minnesota's radar, really. Wouldn't be surprised to see him in the Jets. That's one that I keep hearing a decent amount, Kyler Murray to the Jets. As for Minnesota, I've heard a bunch of different things. Heard some people say, like, they're kind of interested in seeing about Geno if he gets released. Heard maybe a reunion with Kirk Cousins. One name that I've heard that I know they're not super interested in, and that's J.J. McCarthy. They're going to continue to coach him up, but I'd be surprised if there isn't serious competition for J.J. McCarthy next year as the starting quarterback for the Vikings, based on what I'm hearing.
Well, there's obviously going to be competition, but him saying, and that's interesting, Matthew Berry, who makes it clear he's not a journalist, he goes, I'm hearing that the Vikings aren't interested in Kyler Murray. Seems like it's more like the Jets. But then you have Jeremy Fowler saying they are interested in Kyler Murray. He's tier 1 along with Geno Smith. And obviously, Geno Smith has been talked about by the Minnesota Vikings from Matthew Berry as well. And that's the other part. All these NFL minds are in one area in Indianapolis. I wonder how much of that stuff is actually factual that these guys are getting fed, or if it's just, hey, you have a few beers and you're just spitballing things. Like, for example, the Malik Willis thing. Where did that come from Matthew Berry? Because that, like, Garrett, doesn't that sound like a little bit, you have an old fashioned and some guy sitting there, he's like, oh, everyone's saying Malik Willis is going to the Miami Dolphins. You know what? Who was he just coached by this past year? Matt LaFleur. Who's the new head football coach of the Cardinals? Mike LaFleur. Mm-hmm. Maybe you got a LaFleur connection there to land Malik Willis to the Cardinals, and they'll go spend $30 million a year on a quarterback because his brother knows everything. Doesn't that sound as a conversation that I would have over an old fashioned?
Absolutely does. And I think a lot of the times, too, is you have people going out here putting information out to different reporters or stuff just to kind of lay out the field and put different scenarios. And it's just all about what you're hearing, who you know, and everything. But the one that really stood out to me was the Kyler not interested in Minnesota. I don't understand, if you're Minnesota, why you would not be interested in Kyler Murray. So I'm kind of taking that one with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. All right, if you're not interested in Kyler, you tell me, if I give you these names right now, Kyler or this quarterback for Minnesota?
Okay.
Derek Carr or Kyler?
Kyler.
Tua or Kyler?
Kyler.
Rodgers or Kyler?
I'm taking Kyler just because I can get more out of him and I can leverage it in a draft situation because I don't know how long Rodgers plans on playing football.
And that's one where I could say, if you tell me Rodgers for a year over
I can
Kyler,
understand that. Yeah.
I could obviously understand it. Geno or Kyler?
I'm taking Kyler.
Kirk or Kyler?
I'm taking Kyler.
Anthony Richardson or Kyler?
Kyler.
Like,
it's pretty up, yeah.
Why would Minnesota not be interested in Kyler Murray?
I'm not buying it.
Now, that was for Matthew Berry. Then Jeremy Fowler, who is more of the insider, he's saying, hey, he's in tier 1. So nothing against Matthew Berry. That's just a different perspective that he heard. I'm going to tend to believe Jeremy Fowler over Matthew Berry on this one. Now, I'll give you another nugget when it comes from players that weren't at the Combine, but big storylines. This is from Albert Breer. This is what he just wrote. I lean toward a Max Crosby trade happening and maybe this week, but there's going to have to be some needle threading. I don't think the Raiders want to go through the song and dance of shopping him, nor do I believe Crosby wants it advertised that he's looking for suitors given his bond with owner Mark Davis and his view of himself as a Raider. We should know soon enough which path the Raiders are taking with teams like Dallas, Chicago, Baltimore, Buffalo, New England, Philadelphia, and the Rams keeping tabs on his availability. So Albert Breer is leaning towards Max Crosby getting traded. Here's the part, though, Garrett, that stands out to me. Mm-hmm. The part that stands out is the sensitivity that both parties have on the possibility that there's going to be a trade. I don't think the Raiders want to go through the song and dance of shopping him. Well, hold on. If you're trading Max Crosby, the goal is to shop him and get the most back in return because you're kicking him to the curb. Nor do I believe Crosby wants it advertised that he's looking for suitors. what is he afraid about in terms of requesting a trade? He's not going to be viewed as the bad guy.
No.
I think most Raider fans are going to say, hey, your career trajectory, you're on the back nine. Like, let's say you got 5 more years left or 3 more years at an elite level. You're a heck of a player. You know, he's about to be 29, 30 years old. It's not like he's so old, but we are rebuilding this thing again. We understand you've stood around here and stayed around here for so long. We understand if you're going to go somewhere else and we're going to get a bunch back in return to try to uplift our franchise and set the franchise in the right direction moving forward. So the fear that Crosby has of leaving the Raiders and the blowback he'll get from fans, and then the fear the Raiders would have for shopping him. I like Max Crosby a lot, but with how none of that just makes sense, I could see why the Raiders and Max Crosby maybe have lasted this long, because neither of these two parties make sense right now if what Albert Breer is saying is true.
No, they really don't. Honestly, I still think Crosby's gone. I think that, and more so, I understand he wants to be there. I understand he doesn't want to be the bad guy, and his family likes it and all of that. But at the end of the day, I think the Raiders are in a situation where they know they got to rebuild. They got to put the pieces around the young phenom of Fernando Mendoza to go all in. To me, Crosby is the best advantage you have of getting the pieces in there. You got to make a trade if you want to, build for the future. So at this point, I think there's too much smoke. We've heard it numerous times. Albert's coming out and saying this. I do think he's going to be traded.
All right, don't give me the team, but
Okay.
just think of a team. Albert Breer specifically mentions the Cowboys, the Bears, the Ravens, the Bills, the Patriots, the Eagles, and the Rams for potentially acquiring Max Crosby. Out of those teams, and I'll take my fandom out of it for a second because I know I'm a Patriot fan. Obviously, I would want him to go to the Patriots. But if I'm looking at it objectively, which would be the team that would be the biggest splash? If it's the Cowboys, the Bears, the Ravens, the Bills, the Patriots, the Eagles, and the Rams. You got a team in mind? Don't tell me.
Yeah, I got one in mind.
Okay, let's count it down. We'll go 3, 2, 1, then we say the team. Ready?
Okay. We're going
3.
splash or make sense?
Fine. Let's go make sense.
Okay.
And then we'll go splash.
Okay.
I think I know where we're going to go in the splash.
Okay.
Makes sense. Ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Rams.
Buffalo.
I like Buffalo.
I think he would be great with Buffalo. And I think right now with the Josh Allen window, you need somebody in there to make the defense make sense.
And they've also patched up like Von Miller at the end of his career, Joey Bosa when he's older.
Yeah.
I say the Rams because the last 2 years they've lost in the playoffs to the eventual Super Bowl champion.
Yep.
They have a heck of a defense. Their defense didn't play great last year, but you got nice players in Fisk and Verse and Turner and Young. You go a little F them pick strategy for the Rams, I could see maybe them winning another Super Bowl in maybe one more year with Matthew Stafford. Now, biggest splash. Ready?
Yep.
I know. We're going to say the same team. 3, 2, 1. Cowboys. Yep.
He's from Colleyville Heritage. Like, he went to high school right down the street.
Has nothing to do
all
with that.
The sense.
Jerry
it makes all
Jones.
the sense. I know it's Jerry, too. But
it's Jerry. He just got rid of Micah Parsons.
Exactly.
Imagine you get rid of Micah Parsons, you bring in Quinnen Williams, and you bring in Max Crosby.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Cowboys defense would get an upgrade.
Ton of sense.
It would be 2 for 1, essentially. All righty, let me quickly just get to this video. Oh, actually, right now, we'll get back to that video of Ty Simpson in just a second, but it is a Zach Gelb show right here on 365 Sports. And now joining us, we'll take a look back at the Combine, get you set for the NFL Draft that's coming up at the end of April. Benjamin Robinson does a great job of grinding the mocks, and he's kind enough to join us right now. Benjamin, appreciate the time. How are you?
Very good. Good afternoon.
Well, I appreciate you jumping on board with us. So let me start you off here. And I know this doesn't have to do with draft prospects or the Combine, but when everyone's in one room or in one area, there's a lot of chatter. Like, how do you assess the Vikings quarterback situation going into next year? Because that, to me, as the offseason gets ready to begin, is the most fascinating question that we're going to have to see how it gets answered.
It just kind of makes me sad overall just to bemoan where that is, because as someone who's really interested in the analytical side of football, there was such promise around Kwesi Adofo-Mensah being the kind of like one of the first quote unquote analytics GMs. So, I think it kind of ends up being in a similar place to where it was last season. They're going to continue, I think, to try to develop JJ McCarthy, but bring in some amount of competition. Um, but I think instead of saying, JJ, you have the job, instead it's going to be kind of like a real competition. I kind of liken it a little bit more to the Colts quarterback room last year, where, yeah, sure, Anthony Richardson, like you have the opportunity to win this job if you play really well in training camp and show something in the preseason. But, if the other guy plays better, it's Kevin O'Connell's job potentially on the line, since um, he's kind of taken that power vacuum, and now he's kind of like one of the lead decision makers in Minnesota. So that's where I see the Vikings going, kind of similar to where the Colts were last year, which is you don't really know what you have, which is kind of a problem.
So let's get to some players that are going to hear their name called at the end of April for the NFL draft. The kids say that I'm a Jeremiah Love stan, so I'm a huge fan of his, obviously coming out of Notre Dame. I thought the Chiefs at 9 would probably be the likeliest landing part, but I said, okay, if it's not the Chiefs, like who could maybe get him earlier? I was thinking the Saints at 8, but a lot of these mock drafts after the combine are saying like the Cardinals 3, maybe the Giants even at 5. How early could Jeremiah Love go in your estimation?
I think he could go as early as probably 5. I think it would be a mistake on their part, similar to kind of like the Saquon situation where you have a great player, but you're putting him into a team that's incomplete. Um, but yeah, no, I think he can go really high. I view him in a similar category to Ashton Genty and Bijan Robinson, where you'll have all these positional value discussions, but when people are making those decisions in the draft room, they just care about who has the highest player ranking if you're picking that high. So to me, the positional value question, we've seen this happen many times before. I think the Saints make the most sense, but if I had to think of the earliest team, I would definitely think about the Giants. So yeah, that's probably the earliest where he would go, but I I don't think it would work out well.
We all know the great story of Fernando Mendoza. A year ago, nobody was talking about him. Now he's going to be the number 1 overall pick of the draft. He won a Heisman Trophy, undefeated national champion at Indiana, of all places. Your assessment of Mendoza as a prospect is what?
So I think there's a little bit of a misnomer around Mendoza. He's not as much of a nobody as people might have thought. I am a Pitt alum, so I was watching Pitt versus Cal in the 2024 season. I wasn't too impressed with Mendoza, but in the offseason, there were a number of people who were actually quite interested. And so I kind of have comped him a little bit in terms of two players. One is obviously going to be Joe Burrow, who, you know, took a team on his back in some ways to a national championship, and played really high level, and showcased a lot of really great traits. And the other is Cam Ward. And the Cam Ward comparison is a little more of like, this is the new transfer portal quarterback who goes into a really good situation and thrives and really takes things to the next level. So to me, it's like a mix of, yeah, Joe Burrow qualities and then the Cam Ward situation. And so that's the new era in the transfer portal. I think there's very few quarterbacks who will come in who are like completely unknown into a draft cycle. But Mendoza came into the season with some amount of plaudits, but not the same as some of the guys that were really hyped up in the beginning of the process who have all decided to either go back to school or have faded into sort of the back end of, will they even get drafted at all?
Ty Simpson's going to be the second quarterback that gets drafted. How early can you see Ty Simpson going in the first round?
I think there's going to be a lot of conversation. More often than not, if you were going to give me a over under of the consensus number of quarterbacks, I would almost always pick the under. There was the year with where we had so many quarterbacks where Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix both went in the first round, but usually it's pretty safe to take the under on some of these things. So I think the earliest he could go is probably late first round. I think you'll see mock drafts in my data push him up a lot. But I think he ultimately probably goes in the second round, which I think is a fine spot for him. Last week when we were at the Combine, Daniel Jeremiah released his top 50 player rankings, and he had Fernando Mendoza at number 1, and he had Ty Simpson in the 40s. So there's a really, really big gap. And even if I think you valued quarterback appropriately, I think he would go in the first round because the upside is so high if he hits. but I think NFL teams are pretty risk averse. And Simpson doesn't have a really great analytical profile. He's an older prospect. He, despite that, hasn't played a lot of games and snaps, even at a high program like Alabama. So I think there's a lot of questions with his profile, and I think you'll hear a lot of people talking about him, but I still think ultimately at the end of the day, if I had to prognosticate, I think only one quarterback goes in the first round.
Who is your top player? Not who's going to go one. We know it's going to be Mendoza, but who is your top player in this draft?
So in terms of just grinding the mocks overall, I'm trying to predict what happens in the draft. And so right now, Mendoza is the kind of number one guy when you blend the mock drafts and the big boards together. Um, Otherwise, you have Arvell Reese, who's coming up right behind him. But in terms of an analytical perspective, yeah, Mendoza is, I think, definitely going to finish this cycle as the number one player in my data, both on the mock side and the big boards. Last year was a little different. Cam Ward was the first overall pick in mocks, but in the big board, he was like still in the top 10 as a prospect, more around number 8. But I think this year you'll probably end up seeing Mendoza being both the number one overall pick in the draft and the number one overall prospect. There are a lot of people who really like, the Jeremiah Loves as a top prospect, but I don't think it's going to be outweighed by the amount of people who think Mendoza is really, really a surefire top quarterback prospect.
And then here's the other thing I'll ask you on this. I know you mentioned Arvell Reese. Going into the combine, I was wondering how he would emerge from the combine. For the Jets at 2, they trade Jermaine Johnson. They're going to take a pass rusher. I would personally go with David Bailey, but it seems as if that conversation is Bailey, Reese, and then Ruben Bain. How do you think that order will play on out between those 3?
I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about Reese and Bailey and Bain. Reese is the projection. We haven't seen as much of him at pass rusher, so we know that he has a lot of potential around his pass rush upside. We just haven't seen it yet. So the question is, do the Jets want that kind of a projection player? There are a lot of people who think he might even be better as just a pure off-ball linebacker, that he's that good. Or, are you interested in Bailey, who really has a strong kind of pure pass rush upside? And then there's Bain, who I think is kind of probably one of the most interesting players in this class. Unquestionably really talented film. But there's a lot of different questions around his analytical profile. Not just the stuff with the arms, but just him as an athlete overall. So I was in Indianapolis last week, and I was talking with kind of high-level analytics staffer at a company that does they extract tracking metrics from film. And I was talking to them and talking about Ruben Bain, and they seem to think that he actually wasn't that good of an athlete, but he is extremely powerful, and you can't deny the results on tape. And if tape is the most important thing, then I think Bain has to be in the conversation. But I think at the end of the day, I think more likely than not, it would be a guy like David Bailey if they wanted to go pure pass rusher. But if they're looking for that projectable kind of Micah Parsons-y type of player, Arvell Reese seems like the closest comparison to that. Not like Jalen Walker in last year's draft or Jahad Campbell in last year's draft, where those guys are still pretty much purely playing off ball. But to me, I've seen stranger things, but I have a feeling that Bailey would eventually kind of rise out of the crop of those two, because I'd rather have somebody who, for certain has displayed that and has a track record of displaying that at the college level.
I follow a ton of these mock drafts, and it feels like a month ago it was obvious Carnell Tate was going to be the first wide receiver. Jordan Tyson was going to be the second wide receiver. Then in the last week or two, I saw Makai Lemon's name rise and actually jump past Jordan Tyson. Then you hear some things about Lemon at the combine. How are you kind of looking at it now, post-combine, with some of the questions arising, surrounding Makai Lemon?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So I haven't run my post-combine numbers yet. I still kind of give that a week for the information to trickle in. Leading into the combine, Jordan Tyson was one of my bigger fallers. I think as kind of people became intrigued by what Lemon was doing and then kind of have come around to the idea that Carnell Tate is the number one wide receiver, I think people are a little bit still figuring out, at least coming into the combine, they were figuring out where do we slot, a guy like Makai Lemon, and they were kind of thinking, well, if we think Jordan Tyson has all these injury questions, then maybe Lemon slots in above him. It's unclear. I think people are kind of always looking for something to kind of look at a prospect and try to kind of find out what's going on underneath the hood. Um, I don't think the combine has too much of an effect in terms of the things that we can see. Um, you know, Lemon had a fine combine analytically speaking. I don't think he did anything really bad. If it started to come out that in the interviews he had with teams that he kind of blew things off or he wasn't prepared, um, then then I would be more concerned. The stuff we could see in terms of the weird, media interview thing or some of the stuff during drills, I don't think teams are going to give too much of a mind to that. So it'll definitely be something to notice. I think there could be about 5 receivers that go in the first round. And I think that right now, I'll probably have at least 10 that are going in the top 100. So the receiver group is very deep. But yeah, I don't see any signs in my data yet because I haven't been able to run the new numbers that Mekhi Lemon is somebody who would fall. Even if he did fall, I would expect some type of correction that would occur afterwards as people kind of begin to reinvestigate why they liked him and he won the Biletnikoff Award in the first place. And then we would expect something to kind of return to that like equilibrium of where we would expect him to be, which I think would be in the first half of the first round.
What about Sonny Styles? What are you hearing about his draft stock? Because that's a name just on social media. It feels as if it's gaining more and more traction by the day.
Definitely. So, coming into the combine, I think a lot of people were just looking at team positional fits and thought, hey, where Sonny Styles makes a lot of sense, Dallas Cowboys. So I think he's been a little bit outside of my top 10 for that reason. Just kind of like, I think they're just kind of shoehorning him into that spot with Dallas. I think now the idea that people are starting to come around to is that he's a lot more than that. So I don't have those post combine numbers yet, but I would expect him to be probably one of, if not the biggest risers post combine, where he goes from being a fringe top 10 player to being a fringe top 5 player. And that might not sound like a lot numerically, but for me, when I adjust for the earlier picks being higher than the later picks, that's a big deal. So my expectation is that there'll be a lot of teams talking about him. I think, he's even in the conversation at pick number 5. So he's definitely probably one of the better linebacker prospects we've had since like a Roquan Smith. It's really been a while, I think, in my mind that there's a linebacker prospect who was, this good based on the production and based on the athleticism.
We did a segment last week, and it was like, who are the 3 players you trust the most in this draft? And for me, my 3 in no order were Jeremiah Love, David Bailey, and then I said Caleb Downs. The range for Downs, he's going to be a top 10 pick. It's just where inside the top 10 is he going to go? How early can you see Downs going in this draft?
So coming into the combine, Caleb Downs, the safety from Ohio State, was getting mocked the most to 3 different teams. The Cincinnati Bengals, they're big up there. The Washington Commanders and the New York Giants. So to me, the earliest I think he can also go is probably right now in my data that I'm seeing is that 5th overall slot to the Giants. And so it goes at a certain point where when you look at the needs of the teams, it's almost entirely driven by one player. And almost all of the like mock draft share that I see for the Giants in the first round is driven by Caleb Downs. So I don't necessarily see them going safety. I don't think it's something that they would see like, yeah, that's what we need to like fill out our defense. But I think there's like a lot of different needs that they have, but to me, Giants is probably the earliest in my data that I would see right now. But the Commanders and the Bengals wait afterwards.
How about some players you haven't mentioned? You got any sleepers? You got any steals for us?
Man, sleepers and steals. So basically, right now on my website, I show the top 32. And so, right now, the website, the accuracy of like how many of my top 32 are going to show up in my top 32, it varies. Right now, I'd say I have about like 20 or so, the top 32. There's still like so much of the process left to go. I think right now a sleeper that I've heard a lot about in terms of he's not even really in my top 32 right now, we'll say, is Georgia offensive tackle Monroe Freeling. Coming into the cycle, really not very well known. And then Dane Brugler from The Athletic put him in a mock draft, and suddenly everybody was looking at him. The tackle class this year is a little wanting. a lot more guys who might profile better as interior offensive linemen, like Francis Maui-Noah from Miami, Spencer Fano from Utah, and Freeling might end up at the end of the day looking like more of the surefire tackle prospect than any of those guys. And so to me, I would also expect Monroe Freeling to be somebody who's a little bit of a sleeper, not to everybody, but if you're just looking into, hey, like who has a chance to be a surefire left tackle, Freeling seems like somebody who a lot of people agree has those traits.
But with that being said, it seems like the conversation right now is Mawanoa or Fano for the first lineman off the board. Who would you lean is the first lineman off the board offensively?
I would lean Maui Noah. I think Fano, the combine stuff, I think people are going to be a little unnerved by that in terms of the people have only really thought about him as a tackle. Um, in the past, when you heard about guys who were like, oh, they might play guard, like they didn't snap the ball for center, but there were teams that asked Fano to snap the ball as a center at the combine. And so to me, that's a sign that maybe he's viewed as interior only. And Maui Noah, I think, is viewed as somebody who you can play at tackle, but could potentially move into guard, kind of like a Will Campbell type. And so when I hear that, I'm not hearing as much like, oh man, Fano might profile even completely better as a center, which is not somebody you would draft in the top 10. And so I'm like a little going to be on like stock watch for Spencer Fano, and Maui Noah, I think is pretty, I'd cement him as a top half, potentially even top 10 prospect at this point.
What about Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end from Oregon?
So Sadiq is an interesting player. I think a lot of people didn't realize how good of an athlete he was, but came away with one of those like best ever combine performances for a tight end. In terms of the teams that he's mocked to the most in my data, you're seeing the Carolina Panthers, you're seeing the Philadelphia Eagles, and you're seeing the Kansas City Chiefs. So if the Chiefs try to kind of copy and paste the success they've had, adding Sadiq makes sense. I think that they should try to do something a little different instead of trying to recreate the glory days. I think going after more of a traditional wide receiver is the right move. And then, those other places, the Eagles potentially are going to be parting ways with Dallas Goedert. And Carolina is constantly on the look for offensive weapons to make sure that they have a little more to be able to give Bryce Young in this kind of final fifth-year option year for him to complement Tedaroa McMillan from last year's class. So Sadiq, I think he'll also be somebody that rises. I think people didn't realize he was like that good of an athlete. To me, there's still a lot of questions around drafting a tight end that high. I think coming into the combine, he was still only thought of as like a mid first round prospect. And so to me, does this launch him into the stratosphere? I think some teams and some folks might need to rewatch his tape to see if he's actually that athletic or just tested really well.
The other thing that I want to ask you, Benjamin Robinson does a great job grinding to the mocks. Before we let you run, so we talked about Tate, we talked about Lemon, and we talked about Tyson. You talked about how many wide receivers you do like in this draft class. Give me like two more after those three when you get into how you think the order will play on out.
So in my pre-combine numbers, the next two wide receivers that would come off the board are Washington's Denzel Boston, who's my 25th ranked player, and then Texas A&M wide receiver Casey Concepcion. So I think Boston is flying a little bit under the radar, but Concepcion I think is somebody for people to watch. I think people are really liking his tape. He's a little bit undersized, but really athletic, and so. To me, those are the two guys to watch out for to round out what could be a 5 wide receiver round 1.
Tell us a bit more about Grinding the Mocks and the work you guys do there.
So sure, yeah, Grinding the Mocks is my project with kind of taking an analytical view on the draft. It came from a place of watching draft coverage and kind of having to rely on the idea that that person who was providing the commentary was just correct, that their one take on the draft was accurate. And so to me, I kind of thought, what if we aggregated the opinions of many different mock drafts? Would we find out the same thing, or would there actually be different? And so to me, it's my way of rationalizing all the information that's out there about prospects in the draft. And so over time, I've been proven to be really accurate. Pretty much every year I'm getting 85% of the top 100,
Oh, wow.
which, is like kind of an industry leading. And that's just from the data. I don't watch any player film really. And then, on average, we get about 27 of the top 32 in the top 32. And so it's really powerful, just the wisdom of crowds to be able to apply that and have the consistency year to year. There are draft nicks who are really good quality, but it's really tough to be the best from year to year to year. And so having something that you can rely on that's always going to be giving you consistent results is something that, I think adds a lot of value to the draft conversation. And my hope is to make draft fans smarter and more, evidence-based when they're looking at the draft through the lens of my data. And I also think it tells really compelling stories about, players in the draft process and kind of what happened. And at the end of the day, teams use this data in their draft process. You hear all the time about, teams creating their own mock draft simulators to be able to kind of give their general managers kind of like, when we talk about, hey, like the coaches should do Madden so that they can understand the different situational aspects of football. It's similar for the GM. And so teams use this kind of data all the time to inform their draft preparation and draft strategy. And I even work with a couple of teams to give them data to help that process and help like figure out what works best for them to get the players that they're targeting.
I know the numbers will change a lot in the next month and a half, but quarterbacks obviously is what sells the most. We talked about Mendoza. We talked about Simpson. The order, we know Mendoza will be one. I have no clue when Simpson's going to go, but who do you think will then be the third quarterback that ends up getting taken if you just had to throw a dart on the board right now?
It's so hard. My numbers would say Doug Nussmeier, the quarterback from LSU. But when I look at like kind of the like shape of the curve of his draft stock chart, it kind of reminds me of players who tend to fall a long way. So it's really hard to say. I'd say Nussmeier if I had to say something right now, but I think it's really uncertain. You have like the Cade Klubniks of the world, the Drew Allers of the world. It wouldn't surprise me if we kind of have a similar sort of draft to the year that, Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix went in the first round, where, the next, quarterback that goes was, Spencer Rattler in round 5. So we'll see. But my expectation is that, there's really not a clear third quarterback. And so it may be a while before we hear another one called until like day 3.
He's Benjamin Robinson, grinding the mocks. Ben, really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
No problem, Zach. Appreciate it.
You got it. There he is, Benjamin Robinson, joining us, grinding the mocks once again. It is the Zach Gelb Show on 365 Sports. So some interesting insight there, especially on the offensive line, Mawanoa over Fano. Then some of the ordering after the wide receivers. Quarterbacks, I'm going to say Simpson. I personally wouldn't use a first-round pick on him. I think he's going to go in the first round. Mendoza obviously will be the number 1 pick. Love the question, how high will he go? I've been seeing after the combine, some people saying 3 to the Cardinals. I personally don't think, even though I'm a Jeremiah Love stan, as Garrett would tell me, I don't think that's going to be the case. And then the order of really now you could say 4 defensive players. I know that it's pass rushers and then a traditional linebacker, but seeing how we group Reese and Bailey and Bain and how those 3 go, and then you throw in Sonny Styles too, and then if you want to throw in a 5th defensive player, it's going to be Caleb Downs. Like those 5, Downs, Styles, Bailey, Bain, and Reese, they're going to go in the top 10. But the ordering is going to be fascinating to me out of those 5 defensive players that I just mentioned. And the other thing that I want to get into, especially when you take a look at this draft class, the Mekhi Lemon factor. Because we were talking about this last week, Garrett, where Mekhi Lemon was rising. And then after the combine, and you never know which way this information is. Maybe some teams were throwing it out there so he could fall down the draft board because he started to, really start to steadily rise. But a lot of people are saying that his interviews did not go well. And it's not that he's a bad kid. They just thought he was getting the wrong advice.
No, I get that. Also, I also wonder, how much thought do you have to put into the interviews? I understand you got to answer them and be civil, but I go back to
crush the door, right?
Yeah, I was listening last week to Tyrann Mathieu talk about his draft process. He was talking about going in with with the Dolphins and how there are like 20 people in there and the questioning was real awkward. Like they just wanted him to answer who's everybody in this room. Like, so I don't know the scenarios or the situations that he went into. But to me, like, I think the level of play on the field will speak more than the interview process. It's really about the fit for him. But I don't think he's like an elite receiver, but I'm interested to see where he falls.
I think he's going to be – I would have said before the combine he'd be the second wide receiver off the board.
That's fair.
I personally think Tyson's better than Lemon, but I still think Lemon's going to go 2 because if you could be like a little bit – I'm not saying he was a jerk. No, but if there's one position where you could be a little bit of a jerk in the pre-draft process and it won't ding you, it's the wide receiver position. Correct. Just because of the stereotypes that do surround the wide receiver position. All right, let's hear from Todd McShay, and then we'll take a break. This is Todd McShay talking about the draft stock of one Ty Simpson.
Big Ty Simpson fan,
okay.
Despite the 6'1", the injuries, and the 15 starts. But I'm already starting to hear people like, could he go as high as Cleveland?
Really?
Sitting there at 6. And I hope for Ty Simpson he does not become a Cleveland Brown. They don't have the protection. They don't have the weapons. I'd love to see him with the Rams. They pick at 13 to the first of their 2 picks. But it's fascinating to see a guy who has gastritis, got beat up all year long. His number 1 wide receiver disappeared in Ryan Williams. They had like the 126th best rushing attack at Alabama, which like Bear Bryant's rolling over in his grave. And it all fell apart at the end of the year. But I think he's different. And I think that there's some teams out there that are just trying to be really quiet about it because everyone's talking about Mendoza and then the rest of the quarterbacks suck. It's just not the deal. And Ty Simpson's going to go somewhere in the first, and it won't shock me if it's in the top 15.
Oh, the top 15. If he's going to the Rams, I could live with that. But if he goes to the Browns at 6, I think that's a massive mistake by Cleveland. Not just a minor mistake, a massive mistake. So McShay says he could go in the top 15. It won't surprise him. Raiders will take him Mendoza. Jets won't take him at 2. Cardinals won't take him at 3. Tennessee won't take him, obviously, at 4. The Giants won't take him at 5. The Browns, I guess, could at 6. I don't see it. I think that would be a massive mistake. Commanders, no. Saints, no. Chiefs, no. Bengals, no. Dolphins could be a surprise. I lean no. Cowboys, no. Rams at 13, possibility. Ravens, no. Bucks, no. Like in the top 15, we just went through it. Unless Cleveland's just the dumbest team in the league, which they can be, maybe only the Dolphins or the Rams. And I don't think the Dolphins are going to be taking Simpson at 11. So then you get out of the top 15. Jets a possibility at 16. Steelers a possibility at 21. Browns a possibility at 24. And I would then say the Rams a possibility again at 29. But if he goes in the top 15, I would say it's either to the Dolphins or the Rams. And if I'm Miami, I'm not picking him at 11. The Rams you can at 13 just because of how good of a team you have, and then it's okay. He's going to sit for a year, learn behind Stafford, and then the clock is really starting to tick, a little tick-tock on one Ty Simpson. All righty, we'll take a timeout. Zach Gelb here with you on 365 Sports. Solid stuff right there with Benjamin Robinson. Make sure you check out his website, Grind to the Mocks. When we come on back, we'll continue our off-season coverage. We will go to the Saints. We'll go, who dat said they're going to beat them Saints. The Saints sideline reporter Jeff Nowak. He'll join us, and the Zach Gelb Show continues at 365 Sports after these short messages.
The 4-burner, side sear burner with Clearview Glass stainless steel grill from Monument Grills. Made of tempered glass, which is strong, insulated, and allows you to check your grilling without lifting the lid. Our porcelain-coated cast iron cooking grids offer a large cooking surface of 513.3 square inches, primary cooking area, with even heat cooking. The Monument Grills include LED control knobs and are easy to light with pilotless electronic ignition. Better grilling, better value, Monument Grills.
Protect your online privacy with NordVPN. Browse securely, access content from anywhere, and keep your data safe with military-grade encryption. Whether at home or on the go, NordVPN ensures your digital freedom. Stay secure. Download NordVPN today at nordvpn.com. That's NORDVPN.com.
Hey guys, I'm Abby Dommett, 2023 CrossFit Games athlete, and I use Airwave because it helps me breathe easier and stay more relaxed during my workouts.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Very discreet.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, we continue to go through all 32 teams in the NFL offseason as the new league year is right around the corner. Jeff Nowak does a great job as the Saints sideline reporter, and he's kind enough to join us right now. Jeff, appreciate the time. How are you?
Doing good, man. How about yourself?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. So we know the Saints have the 8th pick in the draft. We'll get to what they could do coming up in just a bit. But let me start you off with the quarterback play. Tyler Shuck impressed me a lot in year number 1, especially down the stretch. What did you see once Shuck got into action for the Saints?
Yeah, I think the big thing for Tyler was that he was ready. You know, I didn't watch him out there and say, there were instances where you're like, well, that's a rookie. Like, that was a rookie play. And when he got in the game, and that's by virtue of sitting and waiting for 7 weeks, which I think most quarterbacks would benefit from if teams had the gumption to actually do it when they draft a quarterback and give the guy time to learn. But he got in there and he just ran the offense, right? He threw to open guys. And that's where I think, the whole Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck conversation kind of gets wheels is, Tyler Shuck was kind of boring, but that's boring wins in the NFL, right? Like throwing to open guys is a good thing. And I think that's where you see a guy who's 6'5", who can make all the throws, who's operating at a high level, and you feel like you can build around that. And I think that's where, for the Saints, they feel like you're going into a season with a wide open set of possibilities for the first time in a long time, because you feel like you have an answer at the quarterback position, or at least a young guy you can build around. So I'm excited for what Tyler can do.
What do you think the long-term future of Chris Olave is with the Saints as he enters the final year of his contract?
Well, I mean, it's tough to project exactly what his long-term outlook is in the sense of, okay, what are his numbers going to be? But he's going to get an extension from the Saints, and it's going to be an extension that a lot of people, probably have their mouths drop open when they see the numbers, but it's really just for the product of exploding wide receiver markets. I think the Saints are going to give him a contract that's somewhere in the average of $30 million annually. And he's going to be the guy here for the long term. He and Tyler really had a good connection. I think that's a big part of why the Saints are going to feel comfortable paying Chris Olave. Is his connection with Tyler was pretty evident from day one. He had his 2 biggest games of the season with Tyler at quarterback, back-to-back weeks, 100 yards. He had a big game against the Jets, big game against the Titans. And he was able to stay healthy for the most part. He did miss week 18 with, he had a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in his lung, which really isn't an injury. It's just, these guys get hit and then they sit on a plane, and sometimes that can happen. But it's not anything they're really concerned about. It's not going to affect his offseason. So the bigger question is not necessarily if he's going to get that extension, it's when. I think the Saints are going to kind of wait out this offseason, see everything that happens, figure out how much money they have to play with at the end of it, and probably get an extension done closer to the end. But he's going to be a big piece of this for a long time for the Saints.
What impressed you the most with Kellen Moore in your number one as the head coach of the Saints?
Probably consistency, and a lot of guys will say, you want to be the same every day, and you have the same messaging and whatever. I can genuinely say that he was the same dude when they were 1-7 as when they were 6-11, right? Like he did not kind of falter in that way, and I think he's kind of a goofy guy. Like he's not the most intense dude you'll ever find, and I do often wonder like what those meetings are like if he has to like call somebody out, because he just doesn't. I've never witnessed him be angry. Like Sean Payton, you could always picture like, oh, if he needs to ream somebody out, he's not going to have a problem doing that. I do wonder that with Kellen Moore, but it doesn't seem to have been an issue. And I do think that kind of was represented in the locker room. Like you would go in there and the team was 1-6, and you would not know walking in there that this team had lost 4 games in a row. Like everyone was still locked in. They were still doing everything the right way. They were still saying all the right things. And I do think that is a product of quality, consistent coaching. And as the season went on, the team got better. And that's not all teams can say that, right? Like good teams can typically say that. The Saints got off to such a slow start that it didn't really matter how well they finished the season. But when you go around the league and you find the teams that are consistently at the top, it's usually the teams that are better than they were in weeks 1 through 4 as they close out the season, because that's coaching, right? That's what that is. That's coaching, it's development, it's a system. And I do think that he kind of brought that in and instilled some confidence in people. And you look at the staff, they haven't fired anyone. They had Jari Evans leave for a job with the Steelers. So, that whole coaching staff is going to have continuity for the first time in, since Sean Payton left.
You look going into the season, there is some excitement. I don't know how it's going to go. We haven't even hit the draft yet. There's not even free agency that did begin. But because you have a quarterback, I don't know if it's the quarterback, but you have a quarterback, there is excitement. Are fans buying in? I know it was a smaller sample size. You had Rattler for the first 7 or 8 games of the season, but seeing enough of Shuck, are fans like all in on him, or is it still, I got to see it over the course of a season?
Yeah, I mean, there's always some fan whiplash going on, right? Like it doesn't take a lot for fans to get bought in, especially because the Saints. If this was 2021 and the Saints had drafted Tyler and he had a strong finish to the season, there would be confidence, but there would also be like this expectation that he was never going to live up to, because we're so far removed from the Drew Brees era and we've kind of suffered through the Jameis Winston season and the Derek Carr seasons. And, they did go 9-8 with Derek Carr. You would never guess that based on the general consensus as it pertains to people's thoughts on Derek Carr. But, we've kind of arrived at the bottom of the slope again for the Saints. And I think one of the things that people are excited about is you kind of ramp back up into that, right? This is no longer a team that expects to be in the playoffs every year. It's a team that is trying to find a way back to that. And I think that's what fans are reacting to, is you can kind of see that road, right? Or you can use whatever metaphor you need to. Like you're in a tunnel and you can see the light at the end of it and it's not a train. Like that's how it feels for the fan base right now. Whereas last year it felt like you were in the same tunnel, but the other end was cemented off. Like you're never getting out of there and it just feels hopeless. Like there's hope again. Thus the fans are engaged, and ideally that means fewer, road team takeovers, because that's been something that never happened in the Superdome, at least during the latter stages of the Drew Brees era. I've been here since 2016, and you would never go into the Superdome and feel like the home team was outnumbered. But that was happening. It happened against the Lions a couple years ago. It never really happens in the division games, but you would find a team with a really strong traveling fan base, and by the end of the game, they were louder than the home team. And that's just not a good sign for the health of your fan base and the confidence. So I think that's a product of what's going to change, and that Superdome is going to be kind of a home field advantage again.
Obviously, you could hit on a quarterback, even if he's not a first-round pick. But it's always funny when a quarterback doesn't go in the first round, how people are either all in or all out, like there's no middle ground. When I take you back to when the Saints drafted Shuck a year ago, just what were some of your general thoughts about it?
Well, I mean, I was actually in on the pick. It was I had a mock draft right before, my final mock draft. I had them trading up to the top end, maybe the back end of the first round. I think it might have been 32nd or whatever, to take Tyler Shuck, because I knew they were high on him. I was high on him. I liked what I saw coming out of college. I've always appreciated Louis Riddick's commentary, and he was way high on Tyler Shuck, and he's banging that drum still. He kept all the receipts. So for me personally, it was a lot of me arguing with people like, oh, I think this could be a good pick. But at the time, my main thought was, you're in a situation where Derek Carr's out the door, Spencer Rattler is in the building, Spencer Rattler can be the bridge to Tyler. And my biggest concern was that they were going to kind of just throw caution to the wind and say, no, we're going to him right away. Because I don't think he was going to be ready week one. I think he needed that time to kind of learn the ropes at the NFL level and kind of let the game slow down a little bit. And I think that was ultimately what happened and why people kind of reacted the way they did, because he looked comfortable. He looked ready out there. And, as the season went on, you saw a guy just get more and more confident. And, there's a lot of times you'll watch young quarterbacks, and the biggest difference you'll see is quarterbacks that are limited as young players and are relying a lot on their athleticism. Typically, they play worse as the game goes on, right? The defense figures them out as the game goes on. What you saw out of Tyler was he would figure the defense out. He would typically be playing his best at the end of games, which is what you'll say about kind of long-term, viable, high-end starting NFL quarterbacks is they're doing a lot up here. It's not all about, the physicality of the position. And, is that because he spent 6 years, 7 years in college and he came into the league at 25 rather than 22? I don't know. But that is what a big part of what drew the Saints to him was that maturity and, having to go through some adversity in college with the injuries, with the broken clavicle and I think he broke a bone in his leg on a hip drop tackle, and that cost him a season. But the Saints did not view any of that negatively. And I think that's where a lot of people were missing the boat on why they didn't think the Saints were going to draft him, because a lot of the negativity was around, one bad throw at the combine or, a goofy throwaway or the injuries. And they did not view the age or the injuries as an issue at all.
So you're very clairvoyant about Shuck last year. If I take you to 8 this year and we up the ante, what does your gut tell you right now that the Saints are going to do as we try to make this 2 years in a row?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because you just don't know who's going to be there at number 8. We just did a podcast with a mock draft, and throughout this entire period to this point, the conversation's been, should the Saints draft Jeremiah Love at number 8? Well, me and my co-host, we tried the simulator like 10 different times. We could not get Jeremiah Love to number 8. He was always ending up at 4th or 5th or 6th. I think 4th is unreasonable. I don't think the Titans are going to take him, but hey, I could be wrong. And so that becomes the question: is he there at all? Because if he is there, I think the Saints draft Jeremiah Love. If he's not, then it becomes a question of who's on the board, and or do you want to go all in on one of these wide receivers? Because wide receiver is kind of viewed as a major need for this team. And I don't necessarily believe it is the biggest need for this team. I think it's just a product of people didn't see enough of Devon Vele. Jalen Polk was on IR for a year. Trey Palmer was on IR for a year. Bub Means, who they drafted 2 years ago, was on IR for a year. So you got all these guys coming back that they're going to want to get a look at. And you have Chris Olave, who they're going to sign to a major extension. So I think the team feels like they have a guy there. If one of these edge rushers fall, like if a David Bailey or an Arvell Reese falls to number 8, he's the guy, right? If all the edge rushers are off the board, if Jeremiah Love is off the board, if Caleb Downs is off the board, that probably means Jeremiah Love, that probably means you're on one of these wide receivers. And if it's a wide receiver, I'd guess it's Mekhi Lemon. Carnell Tate's right up there too, but I want that kind of middle of the field possession receiver. So at the end of the day, it really depends on where everything lands, but probably Mekhi Lemon. If Jeremiah Love is there, which it doesn't seem like he's going to be, then I'd pick Jeremiah Love.
We know Shuck is the guy for the Saints, but you guys still have the rights for Derek Carr. How has that conversation been playing out as Derek Carr, I guess, is trying to make a return to the NFL?
Yeah, the interesting thing about it is Saints fans, they don't like Derek Carr very much. For all perfectly reasonable, mostly perfectly reasonable reasons. The team and the player I think are on much better terms than the fan base and the player. So I think that there's not going to be any kind of animosity. The Saints are going to try to find a deal that works. It's just going to be a question of, is that deal out there? The other thing to keep in mind is Derek Carr does have a full no trade clause. So the Saints could not just send him to a team that wants him if Derek didn't want to go. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up getting to a point where there's really nothing on the table and the Saints just relinquish his rights because it's not worth the drama or the conversation.
For like a 6th-round pick, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the best you could hope for.
Mm-hmm.
And is it really worth the annoyance of dealing with it? I don't think it's going to happen prior to the draft. If anything happens, it'll be closer to free agency. I'm sorry, closer to training camp where these teams kind of figure out what they have. Maybe there's an injury that they have to account for. I think if the Saints get a draft pick, it'll be a 2027 draft pick. And that's kind of where it is. To me, it's more just out of sight, out of mind. If a team comes calling, then they start working with them. But I don't think they're going to be, burning up the phone lines trying to find a Derek Carr a home, because I just don't think they care all that much.
I thought for sure that Alvin Kamara was going to get traded at the deadline. Obviously, that didn't happen. I'm assuming he's done with the Saints. Is that relationship over, or is there a chance he's still going to be on the team this year?
No, I fully expect him to be on the team. One of the reasons they have a hard time trading him, and I don't think they really ever made much of an effort to trade him, is he doesn't want to get traded. And he's made that perfectly clear. He doesn't want to play anywhere else. And it's not that prevents a team from trading him, but just if I'm the Bills and I hear that, I'm like, well, why am I bringing a guy in if he's going to be a malcontent? So I just don't think there's trades really on the table because, again, he's made it perfectly clear that he would rather go drink a pina colada somewhere than play somewhere else. And those are his words exactly. So I don't know. I don't think there's any value in cutting him either. Like I've seen that kind of thrown around. People say, yeah, you can make him a post June 1 cut. All that would do is push $8 million to next season. It wouldn't really save you anything, and you wouldn't get the player. So I think he's going to end up playing for the Saints this year. It'll be his final year of his contract, and that probably ends up being kind of his last go around, probably final NFL season. But no, I mean, I think that he's committed to the team, and the team wouldn't gain anything from cutting him because of how they structure contracts. If you cut him, you just eat $14 million or $18 million of dead money the same way you would if you kept him on the roster this year and actually got something out of the player. I do think if I'm the Saints, one of my main priorities in this draft is finding a high upside running back that I can plop right next to Alvin Kamara and have learned for a year, so that when I do end up moving off of him completely, I feel like I've at least maximized that value. But Alvin's going to be on the roster unless something changes at this point.
Emmett Johnson, I would say that's the player to watch from Nebraska. Dual threat running back, had a tremendous season. The last thing I'll ask you, Jeff Nowak, who's been great with us, Saints sideline reporter, the three teams that were in front of you in this division were at 8 and 9. It would not surprise me, because I know how we are as a media. We just love coaches and quarterbacks. If people are on Shuck, there could be some surprising Saints to win the NFC South this year just because there's a lack of belief in the other three teams. How do you view this division right now?
I mean, it's a wide open division, just like it has been for the past 4 years. The Bucs finally didn't win it. They backed into it at 8 and 9 a few years ago. They won it at 9 and 8. They won it at 10 and 7, and they tied for it at 8 and 9. The Panthers ended up winning it. I mean, if anything, it's helpful in terms of, if I'm trying to re-sign a Demario Davis, for example, and the Jets are coming calling and they're like, we can offer a little bit more money, but are you going to the Jets, a team that has no quarterback and has no prospects really to win their division with the Patriots in it? Probably not. So I think it could help them attract some free agents. If you had Carnell Tate going into the draft saying he wanted to play with Tyler Shuck, right? Like that's just not something you're used to hearing for the Saints. So I think the division is kind of, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because it can help you in the sense that you're always in contention to win it. But I also don't think the Saints should operate with their end game being, we want to win 9 games and win the NFC South. Like that's the goal you hit on the way to your final destination. All that said, if you're the Saints and you can just hover around 500 all year long, you're right there. You're right in it. And I do want to make sure that in what I consider to be kind of an evaluation season, I have the pieces in place so that I can get a proper evaluation. One of the issues to the tail end of last year, and it was an issue with Spencer Rattler the year before, is you got to the second half of your season and you didn't have any wide receivers, you didn't have any running backs. Your offensive line was, down to spare parts. You had 2 starters out of the 5. So I need to figure out a way to have depth so that when I have the inevitable injuries, that I can replace guys. And I also have to figure out, okay, what's the deal with all these injuries, because it's just not working out for me. But I think they have pieces. I think they have the quarterback. If he can take that second-year leap that a Drake May took, that you saw Caleb Williams take, that you see a lot of guys make, because that first season is just, going a million miles an hour. You finally get an off season to kind of settle in and figure out what you need to improve on. I think they could definitely win that division. There's nothing ahead of them that I could say, well, that's going to prevent them from doing it. Just as an example, the Jets and the Patriots, like, a lot would have to happen for the Jets to win that division. All the Saints need to do is have a pulse early in the season and keep their head above water.
This may be a really dumb question, but I'll end you on this. I've been to New Orleans 3 times, once for Mardi Gras. The other 2 times when the Super Bowls were there, it was the Beyonce blackout Super Bowl, and then the most recent one with the Eagles beating the Chiefs. Every time I leave, my body is just completely worn down, and the city has completely beat me because of the food and the drinking. And I get on the plane and I go, I don't even know if this plane's going to be able to get off the ground because I gained so much weight when I was there. Sure. Does Mardi Gras ever get old for you?
Whew. Yeah, I mean, well, it's once a year, right? The nice thing about Mardi Gras is it's right after the NFL season, so it's like kind of a perfect sweet spot of me being able to take some time and relax. My wife wants to drag me out to way more parades than I am comfortable going to.
I did that tequila sunrise the one time I was there. That was something.
yeah. And the hand grenades on Bourbon Street will get you. No, I don't think it doesn't get old. It can get repetitive after a while, but then they start throwing you stuff and you're like, oh my God, trash in the air. I want it. So no, to answer your question, no, it really is fantastic. And when you move down here, you do have to learn pretty quickly that, like, not every day can be Mardi Gras. Like, I don't think I've gone to the French Quarter without a visitor dragging me out there in 3 or 4 years, because every time someone comes down to visit, it's like, oh, we got to go to Bourbon. Like, all right, I guess that's where we're going. But no, you learn to pace yourself pretty quickly. Otherwise, you won't make it.
He's Jeff Nowak, Saints sideline reporter. Jeff, really appreciate the time on the inside of the Saints. Appreciate it.
Sure, Zach. Thanks.
There you go. Jeff Nowak with us. I'll tell you, the last time I left New Orleans, I was there the entire Super Bowl week, and my flight was getting out. It was Monday evening. So I got it on a Sunday, and then I left the following Monday. I get to the airport, and, I went out with Patrick Peterson one night. He took us to a great steakhouse. I went to, I think it was this place called GW Finn's, I want to say. It was really good. Went to Mother's, went to Drago's. Like, we had all the stops. I get to the airport that Monday, and I had about an hour and a half till I get on the plane. I got to eat something. So I sit down, and I'm in the restaurant and, in the airport, and I just go, hey, can I just get a grilled chicken salad with, like, balsamic vinaigrette on it? And the lady is like, honey, you don't want crawfish. You don't want this fried and that, like, fried chicken. I'm like, no. I've been here for a week, and my insides were just absolutely cooked, where I've been to New Orleans 3 times, and each and every time it's New Orleans 3, Zach Gelb 0. It beats me. It kicks my ass every time. One of the all-time great cities, though, to go to. It is so much fun. All you do is you walk, you drink, you eat. You walk, you drink, you eat. You walk, you drink, you eat. Party, 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 party. That's all you do in New Orleans. At Alligator for the first time in New Orleans. That was when I was there for Mardi Gras. That's when I was in college. So that was 2014, 2015. But Alligator was damn good. I have never had a bad meal I have never had a bad meal in New Orleans. All righty, let's go through some videos here. So we played you the Ty Simpson video. We also played you Matthew Berry on some of the combine rumors. Let's get into a little college basketball. You had Villanova and St. John's over the weekend. This was Kevin Willard, the new head coach at Villanova, after his long run at Maryland. And before that, I think he was at Seton Hall. This is Kevin Willard talking about someone he used to work for in Rick Pitino.
You said that you worked for him for 10 years and you can imagine what his practices were like. In your experience, after a big loss, what is Rick like at practices following?
I'm not bullshitting. I don't have hair because of him. I had a full set of hair when I started working for him. Like, it's the most miserable experience in life. Like, you fear for your life every day. And everyone laughs when I say that, but no, you think you're going to get fired, and it's miserable. As he's gotten older, he's probably become more of a cranky old bitch than he was when I worked for him. But you literally fear for your life. Like, you walk in, he walks into the facility, and he's walking in at 6:30, and you've been there since 5:30 thinking you have everything right. And he comes and he asks you the one question that you don't know. And it's like, he's that intense. He always has been. He's got the most energy of any coach I've ever been around. I think that's why he's got 900 wins and national championships, because he does it better and more intense than anybody. And I think he has the perfect player in Zuby. Zuby and him really match so well together. And I think that's why they've been so successful.
Garrett, what did you make of that answer from Kevin Willard about his previous relationship with Rick Pitino? Because I have a take on this.
I think that he respected him, but he was also a little intimidated by the man in the room.
So I see a lot of people on social media saying Kevin Willard hates Rick Pitino. I don't think that's true. I just don't I don't think people understand the context of the question. So St. John's got annihilated by UConn. Bad. I think it was like the worst loss for Pitino since like 2008 or something like that, I was reading. So then they play over the weekend against St. John's, and they beat them good. They play against Villanova, and St. John's beats Villanova really good. So I think that question, it was kind of tough to hear the question, but it was asked, we saw the performance, we saw what the response was from St. John's after a tough loss. What is it like in practice after you just get annihilated like that in a game? And even though it doesn't sound like praise, Willard's basically saying when you lose and Rick Pitino's the coach, everyone in the building's afraid. That's why, I lost my hair. The problem is, Willard is so stoic and he doesn't really have much emotion. He's delivering that, I think, a little, and I know he goes oh, people are laughing. I'm not joking. I do think it was a tad tongue-in-cheek where, maybe because of the stress, he does blame Rick Pitino for him losing his hair. But I thought that was kind of a compliment that that he's the boss. Everyone's on the edge of their seat. They know it's going to be so intense because he has to get that loss out of you in order to flush it, move on to the next game, and really get you chomping at the bit to just annihilate the next opponent. That's how I took it.
I also think there's a standard that is set, and you understand the standard and the demand of working or playing for a Rick Pitino. And when you lose, you obviously didn't meet or reach that standard. So you're questioning, well, was it me? Was it my preparation? What did I do? Did I not hold myself accountable to this standard that we met? And when it falls back and you go and looking at the tape or everything, or like you mentioned, he's going to ask you a million questions. You've got to be on par and ready for it. But it can be frustrating dealing with people like that. But there's a reason why a lot of those people are the best at what they do. There are a lot of people like that carry themselves as Hall of Famers in whatever regard or world that they work in. So I think there's an aberration, but there's also a disconnect where I think there's people who generational gaps where you can't do that anymore, or people can understand it better than others. But I don't think there was any animosity there. I do think that is all respect from Willard to Pitino.
So here's the other thing too. This is how stupid our society is now.
That's terrible.
So you have a few people bitching on social media. Oh, Rick Pitino didn't treat Kevin Willard nice, blah, 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 blah. Kevin Willard had to release a statement on social media.
That's stupid.
Coach Pitino gave me my first opportunity as a coach, a fact I am forever grateful for. It's impossible to calculate how much I learned in every aspect of the game in my 10 years working for him. As a great competitor, he was often at his best after a loss. His energy and passion in those moments are part of what make him a Hall of Fame coach. Coach is absolutely the best at what he does.
Yeah.
That is so clear. People on social media were flooding Willard's remarks and everything. And he's like, oh, man, people are taking it as if I hated the guy and he was the worst thing in the world, where I could understand how some may listen to that with no context of the UConn loss, and they're just parachuting in. They see it on social media and they go, oh, man, St. John just blew the crap out of Villanova. Look at this Willard answer. I thought it was a nothing burger.
Also, to me, I see parallels in that and to going back the other day, we had Michael Ruzioni on, and you were talking about playing for Herb Brooks. He was like, you asked him, you're like, well, I can't remember how you phrased it. It was like, did you have a problem? Was there some kind of friction there? He's like, no, I respected the hell out of him.
Yeah,
I loved it.
I think the way that I worded it was that Coach was so tough on you guys to bond the team together, and he was the enemy, so they bonded over. And I think I used the word hatred of Herb Brooks. He said, we didn't hate Herb.
Exactly.
But he was
demanding.
He basically said he was demanding and a prick to play for. And he goes, it got a lot out of us.
Yes. I see very similar things right there between Pitino.
Yeah, the problem is now, though, coaching. And it's Pitino's one of the few that could still do it, where he could be a pain in the ass. I
don't think he can only do it. I don't think he could do it everywhere. I think he's at the right place to be able to do it right now.
Sure, but Pitino's a guy that I don't think he's a drill sergeant anymore. Like he'll go coach you until the cows come home. But I do think that the way his personality is, it's still a little player coachy, where players probably look at him as just like the strict grandfather. They're like, you love him at the end of the day, but as Kevin Willard said, he could be a cranky old bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much is just the way that I look at it. Now, Travis Steele is at Miami of Ohio. They are 2 wins away from having an undefeated regular season. I saw this on Friday. I think their game was Friday. They're at Western Michigan. This is right at halftime. Look at the coach of Miami of Ohio when it wasn't a foregone conclusion, obviously, that we were going to continue their undefeated season. Look how the pressure really got to him and the officiating got to him. And look what he did to this little old poor DJ's speaker. I didn't like what Travis Steele did. Give it a listen.
Yeah, so Travis Steele, he's not happy with the officiating. It's just the 6th game where Miami's trailed at half for this season. And they're going back and forth a little bit. And Steele is fired up, maybe trying to send a message to his team. They teed him up. And he is incensed as he heads to the locker room. Look out. Things are flying now. And the emotion's starting to pour out a little bit here.
So there you go. You get the coach of Miami of Ohio, Travis Steele. He just throws the DJ equipment over. Now, if you had no context of this, Garrett, it's okay. It's probably a home game, and it's the home DJ, so whatever. I'm not saying it's right, but maybe he knows the DJ, and he'll just, give him some money. The game was at Western Michigan.
Ooh.
So that is a road DJ, and that is Travis Steele crashing out and then crashing the DJ set and tossing the speaker down to the floor, knowing that's a road game. Like, when I first saw it, I didn't know that it was a road game. I just saw it on social media, and I go, oh, my God, the coach is freaking out. He's going nuts. He's throwing a speaker. I go, this is effing awesome. And then I go, oh, that's a road game? He doesn't know the DJ. And I don't think the DJ was playing a bad song. I think this was just the coach was freaking out, and he had to get his anger out. That is a douchey. And I mean a douchey move by one Travis Steele losing his mind like that.
Yeah, I understand being frustrated going off on the officials and everything, but you ain't got to do that. Like, to me, I'm going to be like, bro, like, you're going to have to reimburse him. You're going to cost us a player or something. Like, I wouldn't have handled it like that. And I know I'm just kind of overblowing that, but still, like, I wouldn't. Don't put your hands on the equipment, dude. That was kind of stepping.
Yeah, and they ended up winning the game. They came on back and they won by 2 points, 69-67. The Redhawks are 29-0 on the season. They're playing at Miami of Ohio tomorrow up against Toledo, and they wrap up the season at Ohio. I'm curious about the DJ's thoughts on this, though.
Yes.
So, DJ, spin this, you know what? The DJ at Western Michigan was on with Wake Up Barstool Sports on FS1. This is what the DJ had to say about the whole incident.
Chuck, our guy, he's sitting there like, what the hell, man? Chuck, what happened? What was your reaction when Travis Steele just assaults your speaker like that?
Well, first and foremost, Matt, thank you guys for having me. Let me kick out my disclaimer. I'm not a spokesperson for the Western Michigan University Broncos, nor do I'm sent on their behalf. So I just wanted to get that out of the way now. But to answer your question, man, it was a first initial shock. Like, I know this didn't just happen. And yeah, and so it happened so fast, man. It's really quick. And as we're seeing and watching the tirade, yeah, it is right there. So as we, I'm watching, we're trying to clear the court. So as everyone knows, this is broadcast, this is live, this is prime time, this is CBS Sports. We got full production, right? And so they're losing at halftime. Western, we taking care of business. He's totally upset, and we're trying to get him off the court so we can get halftime going. And there's plenty of room between where I am and the tunnel or entrance to the visitor locker room. And man, he just, as you see right there, he just comes and just debows. And so the clip cuts a little bit, but there was a little dust up there, man. So yeah.
See a little dust up between the DJ and the coach. The DJ probably like, dude, what's your problem? And that was that. But it seems, Garrett, as if that incident, the DJ, I'm not saying he was thrilled, but it seems like he kind of took it like a champ, and it is what it is.
Yeah, and he gets him a little free pub off of it. I didn't realize it was going into halftime. I thought it was at the end of the game.
No,
that makes it even worse. That like pisses me off even more for the DJ trying to do his thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, they came back and they ended up winning the game. And yeah, he was going into halftime where he just threw the speaker because he was annoyed with the officiating about a call that was made right before the end of half. There was another angle where like and I know he's played it for you a little bit, but he's like really going after the officials. And I guess whatever answer he was given wasn't satisfactory enough. No. And then I think we've all been in those spots where you're not that thrilled and then you end up throwing something.
It happens.
I'm surprised you didn't do that in San Francisco, obviously.
Thought about it. Thought about it. I'm not gonna lie. It took a lot of nuts.
There was a balcony in that Airbnb. At one point, I can't confirm nor deny, but I thought Garrett Ross was going to throw Brandon over the balcony and then Andrew Valade over the balcony as well in a moment when the three Stooges were on the balcony about to kill one another.
Hey, we held it down. It was all good. It was all good.
Zach Gelb here with you on 365 Sports. Take our final break of the day. When we come on back, we'll give you some answers on our poll question. Plus, we will take a look at Ryan Wilson of CBS Sports, his latest mock draft coming off the combine. What takeaways do we have here? We'll tell you that next.
Do you have a second?
Yeah, come on in.
Thanks. I'm having an issue with Ralph.
With Ralph?
He keeps stealing my lunch.
He's just researching new flavors.
That is slow smoked turkey.
Ralph steals my lunch all the time. You get used to it.
He also peed on my bag.
He is warming up to you. Starting a new job, it's a big change. I want you to think about how you can be more accommodating to Ralph. We're all co-owners here.
If I'm only wearing one suit this summer, it has to be Tuileries Performance Linen. It's wrinkle resistant, machine washable, and built with stretch and breathability that actually moves with you. It'll keep you cool, sharp, and stress-free at your next event.
this being different mean to me? You know, that is an interesting question.
Because there really isn't one way. There's a bunch of different ways you could do it.
But love is passion. Someone you can't live without.
What do you want? What's that really good non-alcoholic beer I keep hearing about?
Do you have that really great non-alcoholic beer that I keep seeing?
You mean athletic? You're looking at it.
It's athletic. Ask for it.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, final segment. Zach Gelb here with you on this Monday for 365 Sports. I saw Ryan Wilson released his post-combine mock draft. Ryan does a great job for CBS Sports. He released it earlier this morning. Garrett, there are some big takeaways here.
Oh, what we got?
Number one, Fernando Mendoza, obvious.
Yes.
If you had to take a guess, number two for the Jets, who do you think Ryan Wilson had the Jets taking at 2?
David Bailey?
Ooh, good call.
Did they?
Yep. David Bailey,
Ooh.
second. Okay, number 3, trade. The Cardinals trading the pick to the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills would be moving to the 3rd pick of the draft, and they would be taking wide receiver Carnell Tate. If that happens,
I don't know about that, man.
the Bills moving all the way up to get a wide receiver, a number 1 for Josh Allen, I would respect that from Buffalo, but they're going to have to give up a lot of capital. But they got Josh Allen. They know that they're going to be picking at worst case scenario in the 20s. That would be one big move up. Big move up.
I wouldn't do that. I think if you're Buffalo, like if you need a receiver, you can wait. And me, like, dude,
Trade for A.J. Brown either, too.
Either that or wait to get like Casey Concepcion, who's going to be really damn good in the NFL. Like,
Yeah.
I think you could wait on that.
It's nice to hear people pronounce Casey Concepcion's name
It is.
correctly, by the
It
way.
is. It is.
Compared to somebody last week who was calling it Conception and telling me
Drove me crazy.
how great that player was going to be in the draft. I think that person watched a lot of film on Casey Conception.
Yes, I did. Yes, they did.
With the 4th overall pick, if I tell you Tennessee's taking a defender with only Bailey off the board, who do you think it would be?
Downs or Ruben Bain? I'd probably go Downs.
Sonny Styles.
Okay. He's gaining
rising.
a lot. He has rose a lot since last week.
I had him at 10 to the Bengals in my mock draft. Now I'm seeing him a lot in the top 5.
Oh, yeah, he blew up last week.
Number 5, Caleb Downs going to the Giants.
That'd be
Number
good.
6, this actually is my favorite name in this draft, not player-wise, but I had no clue how to pronounce this until a week ago. Francis Mawanoa going 6 to the Cleveland Browns.
So he would be the first lineman off, I guess?
Yep, he would be the first offensive lineman off the board.
That's
so
a good pick for them.
So not Spencer Fano. Arvell Reese, then 7 to your Commanders.
I would take that.
See, for the Commanders, I think 2 things you would like to see. You either get a wide receiver or you have one of, and in this case it's 2, but one of Bain, Bailey, or Reese available. I think you'd be happy with one of those 3.
I would take any of them, yes.
Sonny Styles, would you be happy if he's there?
Oh, yeah, I would take Sonny Styles.
Yeah, and we know Dan Quinn loves his linebackers.
Yeah, he does.
8, Jeremiah Love, according to Ryan Wilson, to the Saints. Then the Chiefs, everyone's talking about wide receiver or running back. In this case, they would beef up their offensive line and get Spencer Fano, and then the Bengals would get Ruben Bain in at number 10. So
that would be a solid draft, dude.
Yeah, the first 10 picks, I like it. Now, other just points of interest. 15, Tampa Bay, Kenyon Sadiq. 16, Mekhi Lemon going to the Jets. That would be the second wide receiver off the board. So Ryan has Tate going 3, and then another wide receiver not going until 16. I'd be surprised if it's that much of a gap. Caden Proctor, the large offensive lineman from Alabama, going 19 to the Panthers. That was the dude, right, that was catching the football and running with the football at time, I believe, this year for Alabama.
Yeah, that was him.
Yeah, that was one large dude.
Yeah, yeah.
Then how about this? The third wide receiver off the board, according to Ryan Wilson. It is not Jordan Tyson. Denzel Boston going to the Steelers at 21. Jordan Tyson then going to the Brownies at 24. Omar Cooper also being a first-round wide receiver to the Niners at 27. And then Ty Simpson. Here's your second quarterback. Ty Simpson going 29 to the Rams. You know what?
That would make sense.
It would make sense. But Simpson, where he gets drafted, could be the most intriguing thing to me in this draft. I would not use a first-round pick on him. But then if you're like the Steelers or if you're the Rams and you have a quarterback there and he wants to sit a year, I could be okay with that. But we've seen this go both ways. Like, you remember Malik Willis when he was available. Everyone was like, oh, Malik Willis will be a first-round pick. He didn't end up going to the third round. And then we've seen other years where we think, oh, that's going to be what we're accustomed to, and then a ton of quarterbacks go. Do you think 2 quarterbacks go in the first round of this draft? Not what should happen, what will happen.
It wouldn't shock me. It really wouldn't. I would honestly lean more towards yes than no, just because of how desperate people become for quarterbacks. And we see, I can't tell you, when was the last time we had a draft where we didn't have 2 quarterbacks go in the first round?
It was. I think it was the Malik Willis draft.
Might have been the Malik,
because you had Kenny Pickett.
Yeah. This feels very much like that, though.
Cam Ward and Jackson Dart. So there was 2 there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was it, and people thought that was going to be a trend because everyone was like, "Oh, Willis could go in the first."
Right.
And Will Levis, people were even Levis was the quarterback that everyone was like, "That
Levis
was the one."
Not even, he was getting all the love with Levis.
Whenever I think that was the same. Was that the same draft class, Willis and Levis? Let me just see. I think it was. But Will Levis ended up going in the second round. Remember, he's sitting with his girlfriend and yeah, that was 2023. Was that the Pickett draft class? I think it was. Let's just see real quickly. Player selection. Yeah, I think that was the Pickett draft class.
Yeah, he was 23.
Yeah. Was it though?
No, that was 22.
22.
Yeah, because he went 20th overall.
You know what?
Yeah.
So the Levis draft class, that was when we saw it was Young, Stroud, and Richardson, and then Levis didn't go. The Pickett one was when Willis was also in that draft class, I believe. So that was what did you say?
That was 2022.
2022 was Malik Willis.
Yeah.
So Will Levis was 2023. So yeah, it was the thought I had about Malik Willis. So I think Simpson will be a first round pick. I don't think he should.
Correct.
But if he ends up, I'm not saying he's going to fall to the third round. But if he ends up being the Malik Willis name that falls out of the first round, I don't think anyone should be all that surprised. We have a poll question today, right? Do we have that loaded on in?
Let me pop this up, right?
All righty, let's get to the poll question. We'll wrap up shop here on a Monday edition of the Zach Gelb Show. Who should the Vikings acquire a quarterback this offseason? Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith are the answers. Wow. You like that? You like that? Kirk Cousins, 34% of the vote. Then Kyler Murray, 31% of the vote. Aaron Rodgers with 23% and Geno Smith in at 12%. If I'm running that, I think the 1 and 2 spots would go to Kyler Murray or Aaron Rodgers. Since there are obviously questions about Kyler Murray's long-term ability in this league, I would go Rodgers 1, Murray 2. I would say Kirk 3 because of the familiarity, and then too many turnovers I saw last year from Geno Smith. I get it, he could bounce back, but I would then put Geno Smith in 4. So that's how I would rank him. But once again, our audience has Kirk Cousins 34%, then Kyler Murray 31%, Aaron Rodgers 23%, and Geno Smith 12%. And it's interesting because you had Matthew Berry. We played that clip earlier for you. He was like, oh, I don't think the Vikings are in on Kyler Murray. And then you had Jeremy Fowler from the ESPN basically saying there's 4 names and there's 2 tiers. Tier 1 would be Kyler Murray and Geno Smith. And then tier 2 would actually be Kirk Cousins and Tua Tagovailoa. That was from Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. So fun show today. Big thanks to our guy from Grinding the Mocks, Benjamin Robinson, also Jeff Nowak, who is the Saints sideline reporter, for jumping on board with us. Big thanks to Andrew Valade. In addition to Garrett Ross back in our Waco, Texas studios, I'm Zach Gelb here in New York City. We'll be back tomorrow. The Zach Gelb Show right here on 365 Sports, Monday through Friday from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 to 3 p.m. Central Time. YouTube.com/@365SportsYT. YouTube.com/@365SportsYT. Subscribe. Also, Twitter and Instagram @Zach Gelb, ZACHGELB is where you can find me. And then also on TikTok @The Zach Gelb Show. Follow, subscribe. We'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. We out. Bye-bye. Peace.